When the question of race is raised about the ancient Egyptians or any other African population, it has to be understood that the concept of race is not felt to be valid by most modern scientists. The concept of race involved grouping people based on their external anatomical characteristics. However, we know that in Africa, basically the homeland of modern humans, that there's great diversity. So the question to really ask is whether or not the diversity that we see there in Africa is indigenous, is of African origin. At the current moment, it's very difficult to talk about the diversity of the ancient population because we don't have a lot of DNA studies or ancient DNA studies. However, in terms of physical diversity, it can be imagined that the modern diversity to be found in Egypt in terms of craniofacial features, skin color, and what have you, would likely have been very similar to that found in the past. We do have to acknowledge that at different moments in time, especially in northern Egypt, various peoples who were non-Egyptian in terms of their ethno-nationality did in fact come into the country. I do think it's possible to look at modern DNA profiles and in essence determine what most likely are due to external influences of more recent time depths versus a more ancient influences, perhaps even going back to a Paleolithic period. If you work from the perspective that human populations have always, human populations as groups of people who marry with each other, that these populations all have a uniform origin, that they were pure at one point, or relatively genetically uniform, that may be true in some cases. But at the historical emergence of Egypt, of a lot of settlement on the Nile Valley that would lead to what we later called ancient Egypt, the evidence would tend to support better an idea that the heterogeneity, the mixed ancestry was already there at that time. There is no evidence to suggest that Egypt is anything but of local origin, of Northeast African origin in its place, in its time. And I think that's very, very important. I don't have any particular messages for Eurocentrists or Afrocentrists other than to take a look at all of the different kinds of evidence based on good scholastic approaches while acknowledging the mistakes of the past, mistakes that would suggest that somehow areas of Africa in the Sahara and slightly north of the Sahara are not really a part of Africa, that kind of era, but also assuming that all of the things that are authentically African have one particular color or one particular kind of face. Both ideas are equally wrong and non-scientific.